Hey everyone, I'm Justin Walls, and I have here with me today Jacklyn Dallas. She's a YouTube content creator. Her videos have been seen thousands of times for your fun tech reviews, and we're here to talk about storytelling and how to get better at it. Jacklyn, thanks for coming. I want to talk to you about how to build storytelling skills as a founder, but first I want to go all in on Nothing But Tech. What is it?
Yeah, it's a YouTube channel about technology. We met 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
At an event hosted by one of our friends, Andrew, who's like the tech party guy.
That's right.
And I met him because of the YouTube channel, which I think is point number one for founders. When you put stuff online, you just meet excellent people. And so I started making videos when I was 13 years old, helping my grandma with resetting her email password or downloading a Kindle book. And then I had been watching YouTube my entire life and was always just obsessed with videos and community. And I started just posting stuff. I was consuming a lot of, and I still do, Marquez Brownlee, Casey Neistat.
Yeah.
And I was really inspired by them. So I kind of just, at that time too, felt a lot of conviction that the next generation of media was going to be creator-led.
Well, why did you feel like that?
I grew up watching YouTube. So I didn't know any TV channels, but I knew every YouTuber's name. And I feel that was the first shift of moving away from cable TV. And then I also grew up having a ton of friends that were really interested in a lot of my interests, sports and talking about random life things, but none of them were really interested in tech. And then YouTube was the first time where I felt thousands of people being interested in tech in the way that I was. And so that just felt special to me, of you can now have niche interests and then find millions of people that have the same ones.
It strikes me that the name is very specific. It's Nothing But Tech.
Yeah.
Did you have an opinion about the media market around tech that as you were positioning it or coming up with the
I wish it was that clever.
concept?
I was coming up with a bunch of names with my family, honestly. And I think the other one that thank God I did not do was Just Tech Simply. Because I really wanted 3 letters because I wanted to be able to be NBT or because Marquez is MKBHD, another big YouTuber was TLD. So I wanted to represent what it was about, but then also be able to be abbreviated.
Do you think that's an insight for people who start new media properties? I might have to steal that.
To make it
just 3.
Yeah, I honestly think that there's something about the rule of 3 that's satisfying, and then also I think the best names are simple. You immediately understand what the thing is. Andrew would be Andrew's Mixers or Phil's Journalist Club. You immediately know what it's about, and so yeah, Nothing But Tech kind of fits that.
That makes sense. I'm curious about the moment you decided to start something like this. What's the process that you had to go through to make sure that it was differentiated? Did you even think about it like that?
Yes and no, a little bit, because I think I was in 6th grade. So I was not I didn't have a business background at this point. I was
You started Nothing But Tech in 6th grade.
Yeah, because I was 13.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I was
didn't
a
realize
baby.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I always was interested in entrepreneurship growing up. So I used to sell bracelets before YouTube when I was 10 or 11. I would go door to door, knock on people's doors and try to get them to buy bracelets. And the component of that was in donating some of the money to the ASPCA. So I always wanted it to be a business with a community element. And then I was consuming a lot of Marquez and Casey, TLD, all the OG creators. And I thought that there was probably a market for people that were just interested in technology that were my age, because even now I'm one of the youngest creators in the space. I'm 22. So I think I thought about it a little bit, but there are moments in your life when you're naive about how much work it's going to take to get the thing. And I think those moments are
I feel
the
especially in the beginning.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the best, because if you knew how hard it would be, you probably would never start.
Right.
But you'll figure it out as you go. And so I think that I thought it would be doable, and then I learned new things along the way. What about for you?
I'm thinking, well, for me, I had to go through that process of how will this be different? There were certainly thoughts where it took me a while to convince myself to do this.
Yeah.
Because it is a lot of work. You have to really invest in it. And I don't know, I have a voice in the back of my head that's is this good enough all the time?
Interesting. Which is wild, because you've taken more action than almost anyone. In this short amount of time, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I feel no one is really speaking to New York City founders. And I think you could honestly be the show that makes people feel they've made it in New York, where it's if they get on the show.
With the events with Andrew and some of the other partners we work with, I met hundreds of founders, and they all have really cool stories.
Yeah.
And so I just want to share that, share more of that.
That's amazing. Yeah, and also because we were talking about that you have a journalism background.
Right.
I feel the ability to ask really good questions is the main differentiator if a podcast is good or not good.
It's my favorite part is the
Yeah.
research and coming up with the questions. But I'm thinking again, from the perspective of maybe a founder or even an investor. Investors are looking into new media properties to get out there and get some deal flow going.
Yeah.
But they may be how do I get started? What if it's not good the first time around? How do you overcome that feeling?
Yeah, I think it's not going to be good the first time.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
anytime you do something new, like even now, I feel like I've done like 1% of the things that I want to do, and I'm constantly learning. Like last year, I switched formats from doing like in-studio reviews of tech. So for people that haven't seen the channel, it's basically real day in life reviews of consumer technology and then interviews with the CEOs that make it. So it's like 2 different formats, but they're related in the content. And prior to that, I was doing a lot of in-studio reviews where like I would get the phone in or the watch in, I'd be sitting at a desk and it would be like top down and I would say the specs. And I think that's valuable, but I think as tech becomes more iterative, the most exciting thing is seeing it in the real world. It's like seeing me at a track trying Zone 2 training on the Apple Watch. That's so much more exciting than like me being like, the plastic is coming off. Like,
Right.
so, and a lot of people make the first video, but not a lot of people do it out in the real world because it's like a harder format. But when I switched to it like a year and a half ago, it was terrible. And at this point, I've been making videos for like 6 years. So you would assume that like it'd be good, but I
It's
think
just it's new territory.
it's
for
totally
you.
new because now you're shooting at a coffee shop and you're on the street and like you're combining a vlog format and a review format into one. And so I think that the best advice for founders is like the path becomes clearer as you take action. And like a lot of things will sound great in your head, but then be really hard to execute and vice versa. Sometimes it will like feel like it's going to be hard. And then when you do it, it's actually easier.
Yeah.
So like action.
Yeah, I saw a clip of Mr. Beast explaining that like just make the first 100 videos. They're going to
Yeah.
be horrible, but you'll learn something with each time if you just make a goal of improving one thing with each video. That'll help.
100%. Yeah. And also I think like assuming that you're not going to be good at it and then having like growth mindset, like every founder has that, right? Because it takes so long to have like product market fit. You don't know what you're doing really when you start a company. So like, I think the skills that make you a really good founder probably also make you a really good video creator because it's kind of the same thing. It's just like for video creators, our product is a video. And for founders, their product is like a service or an actual physical product. Right. So it's like a very similar skill set. And it's just like assuming that you're restarting, but you get to use all the skills you had as a founder. So it will be quicker, I think.
Gotcha. This is a selfish question, but
Yeah.
how do you prep for your interviews?
Ooh, tons of watching videos of them. Like so I interview a lot of CEOs and because of that, like there's a lot online about them, but I think I want the video to feel different. So it's like if someone's watched like every Sundar Pichai interview, I want them to click on mine and then be like, whoa, like I didn't even know that was a thing. So I'll try to deep dive back into like, and I take a lot of inspiration from my hot one, Sean Evans, like their high school or like something really early on in life. And then I try to kind of like make a mosaic of their life. Like what's the thread line? So I think like I just interviewed Bethany, who's the CEO of Humane. And I feel like her thread line is she's always been really good at making tech accessible to a lot of people because she had a background in consulting. So I feel like when you're a consultant, like you learn a lot about different industries. Yeah. But then she's also really technical and she's super charismatic. And so like at every project, she was really good at kind of like getting people on board with the idea. And that was like the thread line that I wanted to paint in the video of there's been a lot of criticism of this product online, but there's also like a glimmer of excellence with it. Like how do you navigate public opinion and convincing people and then also like keeping your head down?
That makes sense.
Yeah, tons of research. And then the other thing too is I feel like always asking like the second question. Like a question that I often ask is what's the biggest misconception about X? Because I feel like all of us want to be understood. And so if you ask a misconception question, you're basically giving the person the opportunity to be understood because they're saying like, this is something that people don't understand about me. And now I get to like right that wrong.
I mean, it provides sort of like a good foundation for somebody to say something that is counterintuitive.
100%.
And it makes for good content.
Yeah. And I think like, especially founders or CEOs, like a lot of the media around them is to get clicks. And so they often get misrepresented. And then you're kind of giving them the opportunity to be like, that was not accurate. And what the real story is.
So you've interviewed some pretty impressive like CEOs. I think Sundar Pichai was one of them.
Yeah.
How did you think about building credibility like from the start, like to build an audience where you could try to get some really impressive guests on? Like, or did you think about it that way?
Yeah. I think, yes. I think like everything you do online like builds your brand and like the reputation it takes years to build and a second to destroy is like an idea that I think about all the time.
Right.
So like I will never say yes to a sponsored review or like things that I just think would do like be a disservice to the audience. Like ultimately like my first priority is like how happy the people that watch the videos are. And then the second priority, like everything else falls into place because if the audience is happy, then the brands that we work with are happy and then the team is happy. So it's like there are a bunch of different stakeholders and being really strategic, I think with every decision is important. I also feel like when you put content online, you're kind of a magnet. Like what you put out is what you get back. So like a lot of my videos tend to be like super optimistic and like energetic and positive. And that will probably turn people off that are not that way. Like if they're naturally like more like of a realist or like pessimistic, they'll probably not like it.
Well, I think like the classic like, sort of theme is that storytelling is interesting when there's conflict, tension, upsetness. But I think optimism works just as good as a storytelling agent.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. Because like even within optimism, like you can still have like stakes. It's not like an end all be all. Like Beast Philanthropy is like the channel where like they solve a lot of problems. Like that's optimistic, but like they're solving a real issue. Anyway, so yeah, I think that, and then also I'd worked with a lot of the brands in like a reviewer capacity. So like they would send a product and I would review it.
Yeah.
And then the first ever interview I did was Sundar, actually.
Really?
I'd never interviewed anyone.
That's cool.
And then
That's kind of that's a feather in your
you
cap.
like really get in there. And so Google owns YouTube, and Sundar was like, let's try to elevate like creators instead of traditional media and have 3 YouTubers out to do the interviews. And they called me and they were like, do you want to be one of the 3? And I knew it was a really big deal, but I didn't know like how big of a deal because I'd never done it before. And then it kind of like
That's almost better because like it takes the stress off. I bet it was such an easy interview for you.
Yeah, definitely. It was good because it was about like, we went to Google I/O, which is like their big conference.
Yeah.
And so I basically heard 2 hours of everything they were working on right before the interview. So that was like the best research prep.
Yeah.
What about you? What was like an interview that you were like super nervous but also excited for?
I think the first one immediately because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, getting in my head of like, is that question the right one or am I doing a good job? Whereas I think just the best things are when you feel like it's a natural conversation. And I'm getting better at when somebody gives a response, for example, like double clicking on something that I find interesting that I hope that somebody else would. I'm just, because I think it's Jordy from Capital who gave me this advice, but he's basically like, if you make things that you like, chances are that others are going to like it as well. So,
dude, I love that. Yeah, because it's kind of like, I think founders can do it, but it's like if a founder tries to solve a problem that they have no experience with, it's much harder than if like they're intimately like, this is an issue that I actually have and now I'm providing the solution. Like,
so true.
For like Row, it's like startup banking. Like it's like if they didn't know what it was like to work with other banks, it'd be really hard to actually solve all the issues.
Right. I wanted to learn more about your creative process, but also there's, founders watching this. We've met a ton of founders at events that we met at. And I wanted to really focus some questions on what your observations have been about founders and how they tell their stories. Because I think you're a perfect person to help people because you've been storytelling for close to 10 years now in a video format that's harder than written in many ways. What's one thing you've noticed about how founders tell their stories?
Yeah, I think one of the best founders I know at telling his story is Andrew, actually. And it's actually writing, which I think writing is like the fundamental base of video. So like, that's like the meta skill. I think in life, there are like skills that like are, for example, let's say learning how to green screen. That's a skill that helps you in like that one moment. But then there are meta skills where you learn it once and then it helps you in so many areas of life.
So what are some examples of meta skills?
Like writing, storytelling, being able to like translate an idea in your head and then tell the world about it. Outside of like, let's say those skills, like discipline is a meta skill because it's like if you learn how to be disciplined in like one area of life, that can expand to everything.
Yeah.
So writing is like the skill in which all video is built on, because the hook of the video, for example, like just to get like really into the weeds on YouTube, like the first 10 to 30 seconds matters disproportionately more than any other part of the video.
Right.
Because if people stay during that, then you have a higher chance of keeping them throughout. Whereas if you lose like everyone there, then there's no point in the rest of the video. Same with packaging. So that's like the title and thumbnail. So for a founder, like the 3 areas to focus on are packaging, title, and thumbnail, which is like idea, and then intro. And if you like get really good at those 3 things, which I feel like I'm still learning, everything unlocks.
I think I read that Mr. Beast has like an entire team where they look at 100 thumbnails for one video and pick the best one.
Yes. And like they spend like $10,000 per thumbnail. But I think it really comes down to the idea, because you can make a really simple thumbnail, but have it crush if the idea is really good. But I think the best founders know, like they can empathize with their audience and then they can be really authentic in their story, which seems obvious, but like I have found like the more personal, the more universal, which feels counterintuitive as well. But like the more details I give about something, the more it's actually relatable to people, versus like when I've in the past tried to water it down to make it like relatable, then like you try to appeal to everyone and then you appeal to no one.
That makes sense. So I want you to think about a founder who is maybe in the seed stage or like growing a company, has a few customers. They haven't raised enough funding where they're going to get mainstream press, TechCrunch, whatever. And they're sort of hesitant to go down the route of starting with video or experimenting with video as a distribution or a media channel for them. Make the case for why they should.
Yeah, I think that they 100% should, because even if you get a couple hundred people watching each one, you never know where those connections lead. Like, there's no way to know who's behind the view. And there's been so many times in my life where a video will get like less views than the average, but then that will be the video that someone stops you in the street about. So you just don't know which one's going to like impact or change your life. Like I think I've met some of my best friends through like random videos that I made on the internet or like Twitter. And also, if you get better at like storytelling and being on camera, that's going to help you your entire life as a founder, because ultimately
100%.
like when you're starting a company, I feel like your main job is selling in the beginning, and then eventually you outsource that and you get a sales team. But like, you probably really believe in what you're doing if you're a great founder, which everyone like that we've met is. So it should be the barrier to entry to talk about it authentically should be pretty low, and then you can learn everything else. Also, I would goal set. Like, if they're a founder, they don't necessarily need to be getting 1 million views of video. They probably just need to speak to their audience of like either people they want to invest in the company or their customers. And so you can be like hyper specific with the type of content that you make. Like, I think great piece of content that people can make would be case studies.
Yeah.
So like they run a company and then they show how their product improves the life of their customer. Like, there's this guy named Jay Klaus, he's a creator economy YouTuber, and he just launched a $300 Notion course or a Notion template where creators can run their whole business on Notion. And the way that he launched it was an 11-minute case study on how he used it. And like, that video is not going to get millions of views, but like if 1,000 people watch that, maybe 100 people will buy it. And that's like a pretty significant amount of revenue.
What was the phrase you used? There's no one, you don't know who's behind the count.
Yeah, and there's like behind the view.
Yeah,
right?
Behind the view. I think that I would emphasize that. Like, I completely agree with that going through this myself. Like,
yeah.
Like, the goal isn't going to be 10,000, 100,000 views. I mean, you generate like hundreds of thousands of views at this point, but like, it is about that. It is about like, if you make really resounding content and you have a very specific audience in mind who it may resonate with, that's what matters.
Yeah, I feel like I've noticed throughout the interview, like you have that, like you're like founders. Like, I think that's something that I've definitely struggled with in the past of like being like, is it tech professionals? Is it tech enthusiasts? Is it people that like, I'm trying to make them into tech? And then I would speak to no one, where I think it's like, no, like pick the audience and then maybe other people will listen to. Like, I'm sure that you're speaking to founders, but I bet that random people that are just interested in entrepreneurship but work a 9 to 5 are also going to listen.
Yeah.
But like your audience, the one that you're serving as founders, because then that will influence every decision that you make.
Yeah.
And yeah, going back to the view thing, like I've been posting a lot of interviews online and like I've been figuring out kind of what the packaging on that is. But there have been so many brands like Adobe, Etsy, like Apple, like all these big brands have reached out saying that they've watched the interviews.
Yeah.
And I would never know who they're behind the views. So I think it's just posting online and seeing what happens.
100%. And it's sort of like being brave to do that, because that
Yeah.
takes a lot. Like, by definition, if you're doing something and put a lot of time into it, means you're not doing something else.
That's true too. Yeah, but I love the quote of like, fear is a mile wide but an inch deep. So it's like the second you start, like all the fear kind of dissipates because you realize that it's not.
That's really good.
Deal.
Yeah. I love that. So, okay, so I want to get as tactical as possible for a founder who, let's say he has or she has like 100 customers and they want to get started today. What tactical advice do you have for them?
Yeah, 100 is already a lot. I feel like if they have 100, like if the product's really good, the word of mouth is just going to keep expanding it.
Yeah.
I would say building a like personal brand online is really important. So like building a public is like a huge thing now on Twitter, but I do think that is valuable. So they could go like a couple different routes. One of my really good friends is a guy named Aton. He helps a lot of founders like shoot videos at Boundless. And his thing is like creating a very polished video for their site, which I think is important because it builds like brand trust. And then I think on the personal like social media side, if I were a founder, I would commit to making one post a day about something. So either I learned X, here's something I'm working on, here's a goal that I have, like just putting things out there. You never know what will come back. And then also I would just like kind of define what the goal is. So if the goal is to get more customers, then maybe doing case studies makes sense. If the goal is to like build the brand and get more people that want to work at the company, then probably doing like day in the life stuff and showing like the behind the scenes of like why they're so devoted to the mission.
Oh,
makes
yeah.
sense.
It strikes me that video, like to the point that the advice of like keep creating a video, create one each day, try to get better with each new video. But there is an element of like creativity and you never know what's going to pop off. Was there a video in your history where you didn't even expect something to go viral and it did?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Recently, there was a video that we almost did not post and then it just hit like 130,000 views.
Wow.
And we were like,
what was it?
It was an S23 Ultra like 1 year later video.
Got it.
And the shoot was a nightmare. So I was shooting 2 videos at once. I was shooting the Ray-Ban Meta's Day in the Life and then that video. And started out the day, I was like so positive. I was like, this is gonna be a great day. 2 shoots. I also had like, I was prepping for an interview or something. And then like everything that could go wrong went wrong. The audio didn't record, the camera died, the Ray-Ban glasses stopped working. I was like, this is like, I'm down bad today. Like, this is not going well. And then since we were filming 2 videos at once, like the timing of the second video, it just felt like kind of rushed. So when we were going through the edit, it's like, oh, like I just don't know if there's enough here. And so what we ended up doing is we reshot some of it and then we repaced it with music and stuff. And we posted it and it did really well, which I think I like the video now, but it's not like my favorite video we've ever made.
Why do you think it did well?
I think there's interest in the topic. So it kind of reminded me of video idea is the most important, and then everything else is also really important but secondary, because there have been videos that I think are objectively like better in terms of like how they're shot or something, but they perform worse because they weren't as interesting.
Got it. Maybe a silly question, but you're somebody who has built authority on tech reviews and making really entertaining content. What about the founder who like, maybe they're like on the younger side, they're building a cool company, but they feel like they don't have as much credibility, or if somebody hears them talking, they're like, well, what are you an expert on?
Ooh, that is a
How do you
really
overcome
tough.
that?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think certain channels like Ollie Abdal is a really good YouTuber about like productivity, will be like playing to your unfair advantage. So you have to figure out like everyone has something that's unique about them, whether it be.
So help them find that.
Yes.
How should they do that?
Okay, so hypothetically, like, couple examples. Someone went to MIT. That would be like a very clear one. Like frame everything as like MIT person X, like, because we all know that brand name. So like I've seen like one of my friends went to MIT and he does like study tips. So it's like MIT student teaches you how to do well on an exam.
Nice.
Of course I'm gonna click on that, right?
Yeah.
Or like working at Google, for example, you could be like ex-Google employees' thoughts on why. There was a company that was doing phone reviews. They're called Nothing, and they make phones. And they would be like, Nothing CEO reviews the iPhone. So it's like playing into like whatever people would understand, because everyone has something that makes them an authority. Whether it even just be like time and space. You could be like 5-year, like entrepreneur that's been an entrepreneur for 5 years or something. What would you recommend?
That is a hard question. I think it's along the lines of what you talked about. It's like going back to base. I had to do this too. Like what part of my identity is worth like, contributing in a video forum. Like I did go to journalism school, so that does help. I do meet a lot of founders here in New York City. I hope to build more connections with them and give them a place to tell their stories. It's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just started there. I didn't overthink it though. It's one of those things where I'm learning as I go. The plants will probably get better as we make new episodes. We're getting more furniture.
It looks pretty good though. I will say, like we're in like a legit studio. Like it's a green screen.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we're doubling down because the the team here. We have this producer Jess. She's awesome. She does everything for us. Yep, she's the rock star of this operation. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think also don't overthink it. Like.
Yeah.
People just want to connect with people. So like I saw a glimpse of something that was like, there's someone that's a lot less qualified than you getting every goal that you want in life because they're just showing up. Yeah. And I really like that. Like, I think it's not a zero-sum game. So like, I really believe that everyone can win. And also I think just like showing up consistently just puts you in such a good position that eventually it will work out.
I think Phil, who we both know, is a good example of that. Just write a lot, and he became an authority through skill and just hard work alone.
Yeah, he's written like 2,000 things in 3 years.
You're not going to have opinions on journalism once you do that.
100%. And I think you just get great. Like he's one of the best writers I know. And like, I personally like believe he's amazing. So I think he's always been really talented, but he would say that it's because he showed up every single day and did it. I think it's really like anytime I think that someone is naturally talented, I then just realize that they've done a lot more than I've done. Right. And that is like, we all just have to pay down ignorance debt, which is like an Alex Hormozy idea.
I'm getting so many good one-liners from that. Yeah. Right.
Things. Yeah. I love this one because ignorance debt, he basically says like, you can get anything you want in life, but there's so much that you don't know and you just have to keep paying like that down until you learn all the skills that you need.
One thing I thought about as you were talking about your framework for like how folks should get started. One is just make with video like one a day. Then it's like, think about what's one thing that you can improve. How do you know that you're getting better at storytelling? There's no like grade on it. I guess from your standpoint, it's like, what's the viewer count tells all, I guess? Or...
Yeah, that and retention. So YouTube's awesome because on the back end, you just get endless analytics and I love data. So like, to me, that's like serotonin. Like it will show you like...
I'm afraid to look at mine.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is like, you have to, it's a really tough thing because if you're like an entrepreneur or creator or founder, like you're probably pretty emotional about what you're making. Like you love it, but then you have to be like emotionless when you're looking at the data. Like it's gotta be like, okay, at 10 seconds, like I lost 15% of people. Like that must've sucked. Or like there was something about that was not appealing. So retention helps a lot. Then viewership obviously matters because as the video gets higher views, the retention will actually normally go down because you've hit like a broader audience. So like I would pick a video with like 1 million views and like 30% retention over a video with like 1,000 views and 90% retention.
Yeah.
And then
it could just have a better like title for me. Like it could just be something that's not general audience. Like somebody who's an expert on something very niche that I might be interested in. Maybe 100 million people aren't interested in that thing.
True.
Yeah.
But like views is a really good metric of how good a video is. Because anytime I've thought that that's not the case, I then realize that my videos that have lower views tend to be worse. unless it's super niche.
Did you also apply that in the first 100 videos that you made?
No.
Did you just, okay.
You just gotta like brute force
You just
it.
got it, okay.
And also I think I was lucky that I started so early that YouTube is still like really, really young, and there was less pressure. I think like now the number one job that kids want in America is to be a creator. And so I think there's like an intense pressure to make it right away. And I think that you kind of have to take that pressure away a little bit and just see if you even like it.
Yeah.
Also, we tend to like things that we're good at.
Yeah.
So like, I think this is going to sound opposite to what I just said, but a little bit, you just have to like stick with it and know that it will get easier, and then you'll probably enjoy it more because, dude.
I forget where we were. How about this? A founder is wanting to start a new video concept, but they've never bought audio and video equipment ever. What's like the easiest way for them to get started? What tools should they use? Yeah.
Phone is like a good start.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like I think make it as easy as possible for yourself to get the easy win of taking action.
What if they're like, but will investors judge me for going so like low budget?
I feel like especially if you're doing short form content, like the phone actually resonates with people more.
Yeah.
I think there are exceptions to that rule, but like if you look at shorts in general, I think the ones that do really well look like they're shot in a phone because they feel relatable. Audio is really important though. So like if you were gonna invest in something, probably a lav mic.
Okay.
And then if you like really want to like go up on the production scale, then a ton, like go the film route, like have someone help you. But if you're gonna do like daily or weekly content, then I would just make it as easy as possible and like iterate and learn.
Yeah. We were at an event the other night where they were talking about different platforms, how to use them to get your work out there, especially for folks that are like focusing on newsletters or writing stories. Do you have an opinion on the other channels, Twitter, LinkedIn?
Yeah, I love Twitter. And it's so funny because I feel like people hate Twitter now. And like, I've still found it super wholesome because I feel like the Twitter that I'm most part of is like tech YouTube and then like tech in general, Twitter and like New York City. And those people are great and really ambitious and kind. So I still love it. I think if you're like in other areas of Twitter, it's like questionable. But I found that I've met a lot of amazing, really close friends of mine on Twitter. A lot of people I interview, I've met through Twitter. And then a lot of the NBT communities on Twitter. So like I'll post a video, we'll talk about it on Twitter. Instagram is also great. I post like a lot of behind the scenes. So like if I'm gonna shoot, if I'm late night editing, early morning shooting or something, I'll post on Instagram. I post like a lot of like, I feel like I like kind of like learn like kind of experience life through quotes and like little ideas and stuff. So I'll share that a lot on Instagram. And then LinkedIn is like quietly becoming kind of a big platform because
they introduced Reels into it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's a huge like supply demand equilibrium that's not met yet. So there's a ton of demand.
Well, what do you mean?
Like there's a lot of demand for content on LinkedIn, but not a lot of supply of content. Whereas on any other platform, there's a lot of people making content and there's still a lot of demand. But I think that's an idea. I forget who talked about that. Maybe Nas Daily on like Colin Samir's show. But there's a lot of like, there's a gap in the market on LinkedIn of like really high quality content. I think still, it's definitely more people are posting now, but I think that's a great platform. Phil's a top voice on there. I have other friends that post all the videos on there. I think there's a lot of potential and like, it's a professional place. I actually kind of think if you were to break that, you would do well.
Yeah.
Like I post really informally on LinkedIn because I think if you like see like formal, informal, it probably stands out to you more than like the people that are like, I'm really excited to announce that. Like I think no one cares. We all want people to be people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any like, are you any segments or industries where maybe it doesn't make sense to invest in video more?
Probably a lot, right? I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes people like over segment or overthink audiences. Like like let's say you're selling to CFOs. Like CFOs go to YouTube.
True. Yeah, I think I watched a podcast that is so niche. It's like fractional COOs in the creator economy. And I love it because I feel like I learn a lot from the people that are like the operators behind the creators. And like, I think that's like a niche audience, but as more people get into the creator economy, that podcast is going to become more and more important to people.
True.
So yeah, I think the only reason you wouldn't post is if you don't want people to like, if there are trade secrets or something, but I still think you could probably figure out a way to post. I think I'm a huge believer of like posting because like you get every opportunity in the world, but like, I got an email yesterday and there's like a scheduling conflict, so I'm not going to do it, but it was like a 5-day trip to India.
Oh, wow.
And like that, like in what other world would I like just get randomly like something in your inbox? Like that would never, you would have to like win a free sweepstakes. Like it wouldn't be like, oh, work trip to India.
Yeah.
But it's like because of YouTube. And so I think, like, you never know what
that's the Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott quote.
Yeah.
It's every shot. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. You never, like the flywheel of just posting a line is huge.
Yeah.
I think there are some downsides that people should be aware of. Like there's a safety risk. People can be weird online.
Yeah.
And like, I think cancellation is genuinely like an actual thing that happens now, but we've almost hit the equilibrium where it's happening so much that I feel like it's rebounded.
Oh my God.
A little encore.
Who do you think your favorite storytellers are right now? Or who's doing a really good job?
I love that question. Okay, I read a book called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. Amazing book. I would highly recommend it. So he's like one of them. He was a Moth storyteller, and then he like wrote his framework. On YouTube, Casey Neistat, Marquez Brownlee, Justine I love as well. Ryan Trahan is so good.
What do you like about what each of them does?
Okay.
Like, what do they do differently, or what do you like about how they approach content?
Yeah. Okay. So Casey is really, really good at telling his personal stories, and like taking a really simple thing but making it into like a big story. He also did one recently he just did a sub 3 hour marathon, which is unbelievable.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And he's
Man.
been trying for like 18 years. And so
Really?
Yeah, and it's like it's been like within a minute, or like he got hit by like a motorcycle, and like just like his resiliency is so inspiring. And the whole movie is about like no one cares about this goal as much as I care about the goal. Like I could get a 301 and no one would care, but I care. And it's like him pushing through. And that movie was just like it gave me like the energy to want to like push through on goals. So I feel like the best storytellers can transfer an emotion to the audience, right? Where it's like they're feeling one way and then they make you feel it. I think the best storyteller of all time is Taylor Swift.
Nice.
Which I think is like maybe not that unique of a take anymore, but she's like universally incredible. And going back to your earlier point about like meta skills, like her writing and storytelling is like the skill that transcends every art that she makes. Like her movies, like she made a short film recently that was amazing, and it was because she wrote it. Or like her songs are amazing because she writes them. Her tour is amazing because she writes the structure.
Well, I feel like even her early work, like it resonates with somebody like born after 2010.
Yeah.
And that's a sign that that's universal, like themes, or it resonates with folks.
Yeah, and she's able to write about so many different topics. Like she writes about moving to New York. She writes about like a divorce that she's never been through. It's like she's writing from a character's point of view. Like, I think that her writing has allowed her to transcend genre and like eras in her life because people just connect to it.
Yeah. What advice do you have for us as we're trying to get the ship sailing?
I mean, you guys are kind of killing it. I'll be honest. Like, it's so professional. I feel like also the fact that like I walked in, everything was already set up. Like those basics, I feel like are things that I'm always trying to improve on. Like, how do you make the person walk in and feel like you have everything together?
Yeah,
which you guys do.
100%.
And then
You can't see the duct tape everywhere.
yeah, the cables are hidden underneath.
Yes.
And then I think the other thing is like define the audience, which I feel like you've done. And then like just make a lot of stuff. Like I think if you can, and this is like advice I'm still taking too, is like figure out exactly who you're making the content for and then try a bunch of things and see what sticks and be like really emotionless about like the data and like put all of your emotion into the work, right? But then when you're looking at it, like be open to like changing and pivoting, because I think that's super important.
Where do you see your channel in 10 years?
Hopefully doing everything we're doing now, but bigger and better. I think like I work with a company called Smooth Media, who actually I think you should interview Josh. He's awesome. And they were Morning Brew. It's 3 of them. They were like the first people at Morning Brew. They helped grow the company and then left. And their thesis is like there could be a bunch more Morning Brews, but for creators in specific industries. And that's a thesis that I agree with. So I think for us, it's like really building the next generation tech media company.
Got it. Last question. Because you brought up about YouTube videos, the first 30 seconds being disproportionate. I feel like that also applies when I'm asking a founder, like, what are you building? What's the problem you're solving? What advice do you have for them?
Like how they can say that concisely?
Sharper. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like do it and then see what the reaction is, because you can normally tell, like if someone immediately gets your idea, you're probably in a really good spot. If they have to ask a follow-up question, I think that means that the message needs to be refined a little bit more. Like I used to be like, I make tech videos. And then that was a really bad answer because people would be like, oh, like on what? On consumer tech, on AI, on like health tech? And I was like, all right, like I am not being specific enough. And then I was like, oh, I make like videos on consumer tech. But then it still wasn't like the format, the people, like what is it? So I think like if you're writing follow-ups, that helps you refine the message. But I guess there's always exceptions to that rule, right? Because there are certain founders that are solving such highly complex problems that it doesn't even sound necessarily a good idea when you hear it, but then they're actually killing it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough balance.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
I've learned so much in this conversation.
I got
so much out of it.
Thank you. Me too. Genuinely.